citizens, government agencies, private businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other groups to join in activities that will increase awareness and prevention of childhood cancer. And in recognition of the gold ribbon as the symbol of childhood cancer, I do hereby proclaim Friday, September 17th, 2021 as Gold Ribbon Day in the city of Altoona in honor and memory of all childhood cancer warriors. The gold ribbon serves as hope that together we can reach the day when every child with cancer is guaranteed a cure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Pacifico and the City of Altoona's Council. My name is Kathy Sheridan, and I have with me today my grandson Silas, who gave you the ribbons, and my husband Bob, and Silas's mother. And Bella Graham is our wonderful intern, and her mother is here also. I'm here accepting this on behalf of Dawn Morden, who couldn't be here this evening because she has been diagnosed with cancer herself. And she has said that now she knows what all these children go through and how they truly are superheroes. Mayor said it all pretty much, and so I would like to introduce you now to Bella here, our intern. She just has a few words to say. And thank you again for all your, awareness that you've given to us. We really appreciate it. And this Friday being Gold Ribbon Day in Altoona, there is an Altoona football game where we'll be having the Gold Ribbon game there also. So maybe you can come and join us. Thank you so much. Bella?
Hi, my name is Bella. Volunteering for the Brian Morden Foundation over the summer and throughout the beginning of the school year has been an experience I wouldn't trade for the world. I first saw a flyer for the foundation on another volunteer's Instagram page. I've been looking for a place to volunteer regularly for months, but no places have let me because I'm only 14. But when I emailed Miss Good, she didn't mind that I was only 14. She was just happy that I wanted to help. I first met with Dawn and Julie in mid-June, and I've truly had a wonderful experience working with them. Dawn lets me volunteer my time at Arts Altoona whenever I have it. There, I photograph cherished Teddy's figurines that get uploaded onto the Brian Morden Etsy page. I also help out in the Gold Ribbon campaign by putting ribbons together at home when I'm not busy. I'll be volunteering at the Altoona Gold Ribbon Game this Friday, trying to continue making a difference for children that suffer from cancer. The Brian Morden Foundation, in my opinion, is such a pure and good cause that you don't see a lot of today. They truly care, and they truly want to help every child with cancer and every sibling and every parent and every grandparent who has to watch their loved ones suffer and come back from cancer. Their entire goal, their end game, is to stop this malicious disease from taking any more lives, and to me, that is a beautiful thing that no one will ever be able to repay them for. Thank you, and have a good night.
I know Dawn always likes to get a picture.
Yeah. You want to
That'd
get
be
a picture?
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys want to get a picture?
Mrs. Graham? Silas?
Okay, next we have the Altoona Fire Department Annual Report from Chief Tim Howman.
Thanks, Mayor, Council, and distinguished members of staff. I'd like to first say I would just say, like, Bella's presentation, her speech was just excellent. I mean, I can't even get ready for my presentation because it was so exciting to see somebody so young step up and help an organization like Brian Morden Foundation. It gives me hope that this city and our youth are really going to step up and answer the challenges we have. So Bella, thank you. That was great. Tonight's report is the 2020 annual report for the Altoona Fire Department. As always, we'll talk about our mission statement, our long-term plan that we set before at the beginning of 2020, at the end of 2019. We'll talk about human resources and our personnel, operations training. We'll talk through the fire inspector report. We'll give you some fire prevention program numbers, and we'll talk about some significant milestones. But the milestones pretty much for 2020 is the COVID-19. So we'll talk a little bit about how the COVID-19 affected the city and specifically the fire department. The mission statement did not have any changes. One of the most important things that I like to bring up about this mission statement is that today's citizens have come to expect fire departments to be prepared and equipped to mitigate just about any problem encountered. So it's not just running out for fires. If you have a problem and when they don't know who to call, they usually tone us out to help. So we have to routinely be ready for anything that comes down the pike. And citizens will receive prompt, specifically designed service to meet their needs, whether it's fire, rescues, chemical, environmental, or medical emergencies. We'll show up with the equipment designed for specific and multiple hazards, and firefighters can routinely provide their services the citizens deserve. So based on that part of our mission statement, it guides just about everything else that happens throughout the year. And you'll see that these numbers and some of the things and priorities that we set through 2020 are reflected from that mission statement. So as I said, the long-term plan, is nested right in that mission statement. And some of the goals that we had for 2020 was to maintain inventory of all department equipment, to make sure that it's serviceable and secured, provide over 150 hours of training for firefighters in fire suppression, technical rescue, hazardous materials, and medical training, continuing education to ensure personnel are ready for any eventuality in the community. We also set out to sustain a vehicle maintenance program using a combination of city fleet maintenance technicians and a third-party company. This partnership, where we have some things taken outside of the department, some things to handle inside at fleet maintenance, has turned out to be a pretty good way of doing this. It's saved us some money this last year into 2020, and we're seeing those savings a little bit more even into 2021. So I think that the program that Public Works and the fire department have worked together to hammer out has been successful. We want to maintain our facilities to ensure a safe, clean work environment for our employees. Again, that was very difficult through COVID-19 in 2020. And then affect a positive change in the incidence of fire through an aggressive inspection and fire prevention program. And as the trend we started in 2019 and 2020, we went more than double what we did in 2019. So that program is, again, fairly successful. We wanted to also update all of our current pre-fire plans and work to expand current occupancy database. And that's one of the things that we've taken into 2021 to try to help provide more information about the properties throughout the city, that we can give the information to code enforcement and to community development. So those were our long-term plan goals. We've reached all these goals, even through COVID-19. 150 hours of training is a lot of training to try to do when the instructors weren't coming to the city to provide the training. So we did a number of things differently. We went to a hybrid training program, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail when I get to the training slide. During 2020, our personnel totals, we had 2 management officers, the fire chief and deputy fire chief, 2 administrative officers, the fire inspector and assistant fire inspector, 1 secretary. We had 58 out of 60 line suppression union positions filled, with a total of 62 uniformed personnel out of 64 budgeted positions filled. Personnel losses in 2020, we had 2 retirements, Assistant Chief Steve Schilling and Captain Eric Swank. During 2020, we did no hiring. Operations, the calls that we go on, as you can see, a lot of the calls that are 32% or almost 33% of the calls are rescue and emergency medical calls. And again, those come down to mainly people who were in respiratory distress, unconscious, or having a cardiac arrest. And there's a lot of those going on. A lot of the calls that we had in 2020 that is a little bit scary to me is the number of drug overdoses that we had. It was a phenomenal number, and the number of times we've had to administer Narcan is really high. So even though we had cut our QRS response due to COVID to in order to limit our exposure to COVID-19, we dropped the medical calls to just those calls that are the most serious, and we still ended up with 32% of our calls. Usually it's around 47%. So even with that cut in service, we still had that many, and a lot of it was due to the overdose calls that we went on. The next largest would be the hazardous conditions, and again, that could be just about anything. That could be a wire down, it could be smell of natural gas, again, any kind of hazardous condition that we go to secure the scene with. Service calls are the calls that we go out and we do like training, in-service training, those sorts of things. Those are also the cat in the tree calls, which we do get. I think last week we had a cat in a car call. It wasn't driving, it was in the engine compartment. Little levity, try to lighten this up a little bit. Okay. Again, fires end up being 10% of our calls. A huge number of our calls are false alarms and false calls. And those end up being those where we have maybe a contractor doing work, they don't cover a detector, and the fire alarm goes off. So it's doing its job, it's just, by accident. Very few of them are done intentionally. It doesn't happen all that often, but we do have from time to time that does happen. The severe weather and natural disasters, of course, it's only 1.3%, but usually it's below 1%, so that is going up. Again, most of those due to rain. There's the numbers as it breaks down. As you can see, we had 183 fires. That doesn't mean 183 fires where we have the entire structure on fire, but cooking, kitchen stove fires, those type of things. We had 47 overpressure, rupture, explosion, or overheat with no fire. 588 rescue, emergency medical service calls. And again, that 588 is a high number considering we cut our service to only the most serious calls. False alarm, and false calls, again, that number is 247. We talked about we had 25 severe weather calls. And then 53 special event types. And those would be where we do block parties and we go out. I think during COVID we did a lot of birthdays. We did the drive-by birthdays because kids couldn't have birthday parties, and we did that as a community service. So the training, I mentioned that a lot of this was done through hybrid means. Before COVID stopped our training, we did get the risk management for leaders done through VFIS. We did truck company operation at high rises. That was done completely online. Excuse me. Fire Officer 3 and Fire Officer 4, we completed virtually. Ventilation practices we had to do in person. That's not a class you can do online. Hazmat Tech Refresher. We did Incident Command System 300 and 400. Rope 2, hydrant training with the Altoona Water Authority, and a firefighter rehab class. Even though we had our goal of 150 hours, we got to 145 even with the COVID restrictions. And then the additional training that got us over the 150 included our EMS training, or EMS continuing education training. We did that virtually also with Conemaugh Hospital. They did a complete research program for our EMTs, all online, so we could do it right at the stations, and some of the work they could do on their evening shifts and throughout their regular schedule. So again, we had to adjust to some of those challenges, but we made it through it, and our guys continue to be certified and trained. Vehicle maintenance, some of the things I want to point out here that we do have 6 engines. We have 4 frontline and 2 spares, 2 aerial apparatus, 1 frontline, 1 spare, 1 heavy rescue that carries all of our technical rescue equipment, including confined space, heavy rescue, and some hazmat materials, and structural collapse. We have 2 hazmat vehicles, 1 command trailer, 7 staff utility vehicles, and 2 specialty trailers. During 2020, our fleet maintenance and third-party service company processed 148 vehicle maintenance requests. During 2020, we spent $81,721 on vehicle maintenance, and that included all the total preventive maintenance costs that we have to do by national standards, including pump tests, flow tests, and all those testing that has to be done in addition to the annual vehicle inspection. Our facilities, we haven't had any changes with these facilities, but we are in the process and started in 2020 adding another station, which would be the hazmat station, formerly known as the J&J Recycling Building. We have not come up with a new name for it, but we'll be working here over the next couple of weeks to figure out exactly what we're going to call it. But it's been a really good project to work on, even though we started out with a very, very troublesome looking building, and just getting people not to dump trash there for about 6 months was a challenge. But once we got things underway and people saw the improvements, the trash kind of went away. I just want to give a shout out to Public Works, because they did a lot of work at that building in addition to what we did with contractors, and without their help, we wouldn't be where we're at today. We are moving equipment into the building as we this week, and we're looking at by the middle to end of October having all of our equipment in there and it being fully serviceable. So we've actually accomplished what we thought was not possible, turning that J&J facility into something usable. So that's been a good collaborative effort. Our fire investigators are 2 fire inspectors, Fire Inspector Adam Free and Assistant Fire Inspector Justin Smithmeyer. Out of the total of fires that we had, 185, 13 of those were intentional. In other words, they were incendiary. There was some kind of incendiary product used to accelerate the fire. We had 8 failure of equipment or heat sources. Examples of that would be in commercial buildings and in processes, something overheating and heating up. We had 19 causes that were undetermined because of the amount of damage. They just weren't able to determine what the cause and origin of the fire was. We have 1 that's still under investigation from 2020 because it involved litigation and some other agencies with 3 and 4 letters. I won't go through all of them, but we have a lot of stuff that still has to be done with that call.
Chief, when you say intentional, I mean, should I infer that that's an arson, or is that somebody's trying to burn something and it gets out of control? Or
Yes, that I testified today in front of the state senate, and I'm not sick. I'm just really dry. Sorry. That's a good question, and really what it is the fire department determines cause and origin. So we say, look, this is where it started, and this is what we think started it. To say it was arson, that becomes then a law enforcement terminology. So that's where the police and Chief Merrill's guys would come in, get the information that we have, and then do the proper questioning and whatnot to get that information. So when we say there's 13 intentional, that means we found like poor patterns or patterns in the building that would suggest that somebody used an accelerant to start it.
okay,
And usually they're pretty easy to find. For whatever reason, there's a lot of issues and a lot of things, but the trouble with a lot of those are in these vacant buildings, there's no one to say who did it. And most of these are in vacant buildings.
okay,
So there's nobody to go after for it, so to speak.
thank you.
So when you talk about what we do as a fire department with fire, in 2020 we had almost $3 million worth of property involved in fire, and only $530,260 worth of damages. And now these values are taken right out of BSNA, what the county's assessed values are. That could fluctuate up or down a little bit, but we had about $530,000 worth of damages. So when you take that all together, we had about $2.4 million worth of property saved in the city in 2020. Unfortunately, we did have 2 civilian injuries and 1 civilian death in 2020. We had 9 firefighter injuries on the fire ground. Most of those were bumps, bruises, and sprains that just come along with the dangerous work that we do and working in the dark and in areas that could collapse very easily. So the fire inspections report, this is part of our community risk reduction program. During the time of 2020, we had 138 compliant initial fire safety inspections. What that means is 138 properties that we went to, commercial properties. On the first inspection, they were 100% compliant. We had 278 that we found violations. So we did a total of 416 initial fire inspections in 2020. The fire and safety reinspection is when we find one of those violations, we go back to make sure it's been corrected. And after that reinspection, out of that 416, 256 were compliant on our second inspection. We had 31 that still had done nothing with the violations that we found, and then we had 69 that partially complied. So we had a total of 356 re-inspections. We do also do site inspections that have to do with operational permits for different processes, whether it be a chemical company with a new chemical or a process. There's different fees that we have for inspecting that and making sure that they handle those things properly. And we did 75 of those. And we had 36 of them that were compliant immediately with using the right stuff for those processes. And we had 39 that had violations that they had to correct before they could actually do that process or keep that product on site. We had 1 open burning permit issued, and we had 4 tent permits issued. And again, they were all compliant because they have to be compliant before they can actually do what they need to do. So that was the total work that the fire inspectors did as far as the fire inspections. And I would like to, congratulate them on such a great job they've done, not just in 2020, but even this year. We had a total of 852 inspections. And if you can remember back just 4 years ago, we had 128 inspections total. So, I mean, this has really made a big difference. We still have our juvenile fire center program, but referrals were, we didn't get any referrals in 2020 because of COVID-19. We did try to talk to some kids over the phone, and we did have some kids come to the firehouse for a tour and to talk to the firefighters just individually. But official referrals, we didn't handle any in 2020 because of that. We're going to take it case by case and continue the program. Hopefully we get some referrals. Again, some of those referrals weren't coming because the kids weren't in school. So this year it might be a little bit different for us. Captain Josh Link and Engineer Dan Chestnut run that program. They do a fine job. They keep up on all the current counseling techniques and do a great job documenting what they do with the children to make sure their propensity to set fires is set back, we hope. Fire prevention and education, we spent a good time of our day spending with businesses and with children in the schools when we can. This year our numbers are obviously 2020 is going to be a lot lower than previous years because we just weren't out in the schools like we were. But we did do some station tours, and we did do a good bit of the supervised fire drills that we do every year at the school. So we did sustain some of our numbers with the people that we contacted through fire prevention. All in all, we did 94 programs in 2020, and those 94 programs reached 5,300 students and 1,181 adults. So even though we were reduced, we still had a successful year, I think, with the restrictions that we had in place. That brings me down to the 2020 pandemic data. Part of this is that the fire department does have the emergency management and try to track these numbers for you and kept you up to date with what was going on. and provided recommendations that were given to us from the county and the state. During 2020, the city of Altoona, and this number, of course, is going to be lower than the county numbers that you see because we don't have a city health department. We have to rely on the data from the state to get the county numbers. But they do provide zip code, down to zip code. So in 2020, we had 6,561 cases of COVID-19. We started seeing ICU hospitalizations at 2 per day in September of 2020. The highest number of ICU hospitalizations was in November of 2020 when we saw 24 COVID patients admitted to the ICU in 1 week. Today, currently, we're averaging about 3. Tragically, we've seen 346 residents of the Altoona metro area die from COVID-19. December of 2020 was the deadliest month when we averaged 9 persons per week passing away from complications related to the coronavirus. The Altoona Fire Department suspended medical calls that were not considered life-threatening. We continue to respond to cardiac arrest and unconscious patients. The reduction in service was put in place to limit exposures to the virus and protect our fire suppression forces. We also had 60% of our firefighters vaccinated. And even with those mitigation efforts, we still had 20 positive cases among our personnel that equaled just over 100 hours of lost time. The city had 37,678 direct COVID-19 emergency response expenses. The PEMA state grant monies that we got for COVID totaled $40,069. The fire department also participated in a regional FEMA grant that provided $26,000 in PPE. And right now the estimate is that we have enough PPE to supply the city continuity operations for at least 6 months, calculated at the highest burn rate. So right now, and that's one of the things that's so important about this hazmat building, is we have the equipment stored there now instead of all over the firehouses all over the city. We are able to consolidate it and put it in one place. So that's 2020 pandemic in a slide. I'm sure there's a lot more we could talk about, but that's pretty much how it affected the city and the fire department. Some of the things that we're working on this year, again, are 2021 goals, and we're about a good way through this. Complete and distribute the department tactical standard operating procedures. We updated those. We do have those handed out, and we've been training on those. Conduct over 150 hours per shift. And again, we are well on our way of reaching 150 hours for this year. Complete the hazmat building at Margaret Avenue, which I think is well on its way. And then again, we talked about stockpiling the COVID-19 PPE for future needs. The fall, that's coming up October 13th, we're doing our hazardous materials emergency response team exercise, which will recertify our team for 3 years. One of the things that's interesting about this year is we've partnered with a local business, Simtex, to allow us to go out and instead of just doing it at one of the firehouses, as have a little more reality in our training and the certification process. And Simtex Organics has provided the space and materials and actually set up some simulators for us. So that's something that is a good partnership with the community as far as that goes. We need to maintain our fire department facilities, again, by upgrading apparatus bay floors, our diesel exhaust evacuation systems, and maintaining our supply hose, all of which are underway. Conducting some cross-training with the police department as it would come to mass casualty incidents, and we did work together here recently at the exercise at the convention center. And then the goal for this year would be to complete and implement the community risk reduction plan using emergency response engineering, enforcement, education, and economic incentives as the basis for employing fire department resources to mitigate community risk. So that finishes the presentation. Pending your questions, that's all I have, Mayor.
Naturally, I have some questions. So the figures for COVID are zip coded, right? So that would include all of Logan Township.
Yes.
That would include some of the other surrounding townships that have Altoona mailing addresses.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned the J&J building and the fact that you're able to centralize supply. Now, then organizationally, who's in charge of that inventory of supplies then?
Right now, with the absence and the retirement of Deputy Chief Mike Tefano, he would have been the one that would be in charge of that. Right now, it's me, and then I'm delegating certain tasks to line officers. Right now, Captain Ralph Lee has taken a larger role in helping run the hazmat operations, and he has been the one who has completed the actual hands-on inventories for me. And so as we use it, you know, we have a tool that we have that we can input numbers, and it
Okay.
gives us our output. And then, you know, the 6-month number is something that we decided that we needed to have on stock, and that was what some of that $38,000 money was that we spent, was to be able to have some extra stuff here in case we needed it.
Okay, and then, you know, that 60% vaccination rate that you had referenced, is that current?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess maybe getting ahead of the agenda, but, you know, for the manager and the solicitor, with the president looking at mandating vaccines for employers of 100 or more people, what's the impact going to be on a municipality like Altoona with our municipal employees?
If I could jump in there,
Please.
Councilman. Right now, the president is talking about doing that via an emergency order through OSHA. The OSHA Act specifically has an exemption that exempts state and local governments
Okay,
from that, so that would not be applicable to us. Now that emergency order, I haven't seen it, but I can tell you the act as it exists has that exemption.
okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Council, one of the other things that we're looking at, I talked to the manager this week about too, is getting kits and providing the testing ability in-house instead of us having to send people out. And we're just in the stages of looking into that now, but that would also give us another alternative to having everybody vaccinated. They would have to be tested.
I guess one of the things you're talking about is that you'd have to have like weekly testing implemented for, so, okay.
Yeah, we've started discussions, but I don't think there's been any kind of decisions or anything that would have come up about that. But we have started to kind of come up with some contingency plans with that.
Probably prudent. Thank you.
Chief, thanks for your report this evening. I do have a couple of questions as far as emergency response. So, in the event that there is an automobile accident right outside the borders of the city, I think there's been some information that's been put out before that the city doesn't respond to those calls if it's in a neighboring municipality that's not within the city. Can you maybe share the process on that as to whether that there's validity to that?
Yeah. So the way the Commonwealth is set up is that the municipality gets to decide what emergency responses are called when there's an emergency. So the municipal leaders, yourselves, city council for the city of Altoona, would be the ones who would decide exactly who's going to respond. We have box alarm assignments that we submitted long ago that has been approved and hasn't changed and doesn't really need to have any action taken because, you know, it's set up the way we need it to be set up. But we can't determine where we respond outside of our areas. So we do have some agreements that are mutual aid agreements that fall under the state mutual aid agreement between a couple of Logan Township companies. For example, 17th Street, all the way up from Valley View to the interstate, is now we are called at the same time that they're called. We get there quicker, obviously, because we have people sitting there ready to jump in the truck and go. We find the incident, stabilize it, and then they'll follow up and get there a few minutes later with the manpower to be able to do the major bulk of the work. We did have an agreement with Logan Township United on 4th Avenue. We're literally seconds from 4th Avenue in Juniata, but it goes in and out of the city 4 or 5 times along there. So, for instance, at Juniata Gap Road, we wouldn't get called. And we've had a couple of calls there where we had some serious entrapments at that intersection, and we were not called.
So does that call go then to the township?
It goes to the township, and if they don't respond, they go to the next township company, which could even be further away, before they would call us. So we went through a process of discussing this with the township. We had an agreement that they would add us to their box alarm assignments. Months went by, and that was never done. Since then, I've contacted them, made some more progress towards getting us called there, but I still do not know for sure that it's been memorialized by them having the township supervisors provide the 911 center with the needed documentation and make it official.
Okay. I think that's something that we should definitely continue to explore because, I mean, you could have Altoona residents that live in a city traveling through the township, don't even realize we're traveling through the township, we're involved in an accident, and there could be, someone else responding from several miles away when help's literally right down the street.
So the good news is we've been doing this for a couple of years with Lakemont, and it is the success story, the example of how we should be doing this. There should be no turf issues. There should be no
I
question
agree.
about who goes where. It should be proximity dispatched.
Yep.
If you're the closest, you should send us. One of the issues, and this came up in this state senate hearing today, is that there's no body that's in charge right now. So as a Commonwealth, it goes to the lowest common denominator, which is the municipalities decide who's going to go what and where. But when you have 23 separate entities responding, they're all making their own decisions about who's going where.
It's definitely the most inefficient for taxpayers and folks within our communities.
It has been my goal to better this, and I think we've made progress in a sense that we do have that area on 17th Street. We do have 4th Avenue, but there's a lot of other areas we can do the same and work together. And Logan, if you talk to Lakemont, they are absolutely happy with the setup because they still get to go and serve their community. They're not cut out of it, and we get to work together with them. And they've found that calling the city for a little bit of help out there during the hours when you don't have coverage is not it's not a bad thing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. With these accidents, response time means everything. And that's oftentimes city residents and families, and we need to do everything we can for the safety sake of our citizens. Say thanks a lot for your work. And I really thought your department really did a good job stepping up last year, considering all the challenges that came, and as if it's not challenging enough. So good job.
Thank you. And I would like to say that the firefighters have done a great job with all those challenges and being flexible, and the conflicting data that comes out that one day it's this, the next day it's that, but there was really no complaints. They just did what they were asked to do and went out and served the public and did so in a very professional fashion. So I certainly thank them for what they do for the city.
Thank you, Chief. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, we'll move on to the 2022 minimum municipal obligation certification. City Manager Omar Strom.
Mayor and Council, you'll notice in your packet a little tab that says MMO. So what I'm presenting to you here is the 2022 minimum municipal obligation. It's something that has to be certified to the council. You don't have to take any action. I just have to present it to you, and I'll explain it to you, at least in brief. You'll see you'll have a worksheet in front of you that has columns for each of the city's 3 pension plans. And then along the left-hand side, 1 through 9, which is the calculation of the minimum municipal obligation for each fund. So looking at number 1, that's the annual payroll. That's an estimate for 2021. Number 2 is a normal cost that comes out of the most recent actuarial evaluation report for each plan. Number 3 is the estimated normal cost, which is number 1 times number 2. Number 4 is the amortization amount. Again, this comes out of the actuarial evaluation report for each fund. Estimated administrative expenses, it's a best estimate. That's done by the actuary for each plan. Total 2022 financial requirements, that's the normal cost, the amortization amount, and the administrative costs added together. Number 7 is the 2022 estimated employee contribution. That's 5% of, across the board for each plan of number 1, referencing the estimated annual payroll. There's a funding adjustment. There's 0 funding adjustments for all of the plans. And then the total obligation for each plan is there at the bottom of number 9. So for the police, that's $2,506,151. For the fire plan, it's $2,257,415. And for the non-uniform plan, that is $633,024. All of those put together, it's slightly less than what it was in 2021 by about $16,000 less. Any questions about that? So these numbers will go into the 2022 budget for payment of, to the plans, as it always does.
Question, Mr. Manager, has the actuary relayed to us even, I'm sure, I haven't seen the reports, but I would imagine that last year's financial returns were pretty strong for each of the 3 pension plans?
So we don't have the finalized 2021 actuarial valuation reports. They will come out.
But we
Very
have
soon.
the ending account statements
Yes.
for how they did.
Mhm.
And I would just, a couple of things to point out here. Really, no matter what the returns are, I would strongly consider this inform this body to continue fully funding the MMOs as we've done historically, because we cannot take any chances on not meeting that requirement, regardless of the investment returns. And secondly, that's number 2, the percentage of payroll. For every dollar that we pay in salary, essentially those numbers in cents are an additional benefit. So for every dollar that's paid in benefit, just to kind of put into monetized terms. So we're in better shape than most on these defined benefit plans. Our goal is to continue to make that promise be there for our employees, but we're definitely doing our best to get the fully funded status, hopefully.
Well, it's not only just for the benefit of the employees, but by continuing to make that MMO, I mean, it's beneficial to the taxpayers to keep trying to get those pensions towards being fully funded.
Yeah, if this, these government plans are very different from private sector plans in that if these go belly up, these obligations are part of the general fund, and that would not be in the taxpayer's best interest.
Yes, just for clarification, these do flow through the general fund, these
Yeah.
payments, and we are legally required to make those payments every year.
Thank you.
Do you need anything else from us at this time, Omar, for this?
I do not. It didn't require any action of council. It just had to be presented or certified to council.
Okay, thank you. All right, this time we'll open up the floor for public comment. If anybody would like to address council, you may do so by coming to the podium and stating your name and address for the record. We ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes, and if anybody would like to make public comment over the phone, you may do so by dialing the number on your screen and giving your name and address when you are asked to speak. Floor is now open.
Galwin, Ingle Rental Properties. We have multiple locations within the city. After a weekend of sobering reminders of the terror attacks on 9/11 20 years ago, I thought to myself, wouldn't it sure be a blessing if someone even a day before the attacks could have noticed something and alerted people about some behavior or actions that may have triggered an alert. I'm sure most of you still remember Oklahoma City bombings, which happened April 19th, 1995, when a government extremist did a terror attack at Oklahoma City Federal Building. Just think if someone saw something beforehand and said something, that terrible attack may have been avoided as well. I'm not here to report anything so devastating by any means, but what needs to be addressed and what I am concerned about, not just for myself, my tenants, my business, but society as well. And after speaking to other landlords about these past and more current crimes, I'm sorry. And that issue comes from the convicted felon that works in the Altoona City Code Department. And after speaking to other landlords about these past and more current crimes, they are concerned as well. Why I'm here tonight to address this with the council tonight is because many other landlords don't want to be potential targets of retaliation once this is brought to the surface, but my conscience will not let me be quiet. The code inspector I refer to is not just a convicted felon of robbery and burglary and felony robbery and misdemeanor burglary. He more recently has been charged with felony aggravated assault, felony assault, reckless endangerment, and assault with a deadly weapon. In my opening, I mentioned the Oklahoma City bombing specifically for a reason. Well, on the 15-year anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, this individual, armed with a rifle on his back, and I have the photos, I'll be heading this out, protested the government in Virginia as well. I have that article, and this is national news from Reuters, of him photographed and his name published during the protest. Although his most recent charges were lessened because he hired a very good attorney, please note that he didn't even pay the attorney fees, and the attorney had to sue him, and he has outstanding judgment for failure to pay his attorney fees of $9,000. He also has not paid his fines and has over $6,000 in back fines against him. And this year alone, he's only made two payments of $50. My concern is fourfold. Number one, why we are allowing this kind of criminal inside rental units to do rental inspections when possibly he's not just doing an inspection, as a criminal's past speaks for itself. Number two, were we not advising landlords and tenants who are required to have these inspections? And I have no problem anybody inspecting my properties. I've worked with the code department very well in 22 years. But why are we not being alerted or advised that this inspector's a past felon of theft and robbery and has a violent issues against society and is coming into their homes and property? At least to make sure the tenants can hide their valuables. Number three, why is this person even working in the city code department? And finally, do we need to potentially be concerned that with allowing a code officer with this kind of past working in that kind of position, that there isn't a chance that another or a new code officer not yet hired may have a more dramatic criminal past, say for example, a crime against children, going into a house and doing an inspection, neither the tenant or the landlord has a clue. I personally had a code violation against Scott Campanera, who I am referring to. When questioned about the violation, he did not even remember what the issues were previously. I called the code department 3 times asking him to get information on this code violation. Although Mr. Campanera never returned my calls, I was able to get the receptionist at 425 who placed me in direct communication with Scott Campanera. Other than being treated worse than I've ever been treated in my life from the first moment I spoke to him, I was advised that he was the union president and it was now 4:33, which was 3 minutes past the time he should be working or speaking to me, and he hung up. Apparently his anger management classes that he was forced to take in his mental health evaluation still remains open as well. I asked the city to do something about this for not just me, but other landlords and tenants that rent off of us, because no way should a criminal be coming into a rental property and doing a rental inspection if we don't know their past. And the documents that I have here are documents that have been that I've searched him out. It explains his assault charges. It explains his past felony theft charges. It even has a detailed breakdown of him only paying $50 on his fine and not even paying for his attorney, as well as the pictures of him carrying a rifle on the 15th anniversary of Oklahoma City bombings and the Oklahoma City bombing information to prove that the dates coincide. That's my statement for the night. Can I present the council somebody here with this document? Okay, 'cause there's only one copy for everybody, and I'll also include my pre-read statement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good evening. My name is Mike Parisi. I live back in 822 South 8th Street in the Valley. Um, I got hit also with this. I didn't make the original council meeting when this was discussed. I know this is a subject that's in progress. But it seemed like we're talking about Brush Run when it overflowed. And seemed like a lot of talk was on South 12th Street, but I also got hit. I'm on South 8th Street. And when it come over on Blaine Avenue on the corner of South 8th Street, on the corner of Blaine Avenue, and my appliances out too. And I just want to bring my 2 cents in on it because I missed the last meeting, and I'm just hoping that we can get something done with it. When I first moved there, I've been there for like, next year will be 50 years. And the valley is not the same as it was back then. And the creek is not the same. Trees are growing in it. And when the trees are growing in it, it changed the course of the river, the creek. Now it's washing away land, and it's coming towards me. And I'm just hoping, I know it's been discussed before, I'm just hoping that we can get something good come of it. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
sir.
Victor, is there anybody on the phone? No. No? Okay. All right, seeing no more public comment, we will close the floor and move on to the resolutions. Linda?
Before I start, just to let you know, I'm going to pull Resolution F for a separate vote, and everyone but Councilman Kashadi can vote because it's in reference to the public hearing. And of course, Councilman Ickes, you can say, yeah, that you're
Do
abstaining.
you want to do that one first?
I'll
Do
do
we,
either that or I'll do it second, either one, and do a
Okay.
consent. Okay, let me get started. Resolution A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, August 9th, 2021. Resolution B is awarding the 2021 tree project to Henry Enterprises of Hollidaysburg in the amount of $37,965 payable from the general fund tree maintenance line item, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item C is awarding the slip lining of pipes on 17th Street Phase 2 to Geyer Brothers of New Enterprise in the amount of $238,260 payable from the general fund and highway aid, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item D is adopting a resolution submitted to the City Council proposing to amend the Articles of Incorporation of the Parking Authority of the City of Altoona by increasing the term of existence of the Parking Authority of the City of Altoona to September 17th, 2070, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents and certifications and the city clerk to attest to same. Item E is rescinding the following resolutions for the following properties. Resolution 55-21, 1817 to 19 8th Avenue. Resolution 56-21, 1108 17th Avenue. Resolution 57-21, 1110 17th Avenue. Resolution 58-21, 1118 17th Avenue. Resolution 65-21, 208 to 210 East Cherry Avenue. The repository bids were submitted by Dior Lowry. Mr. Lowry has not followed through with finalizing the transactions by paying the required funds per the Tax Claim Bureau of the County of Blair. This sale shall not be completed and the properties shall remain in the repository. Item F is authorizing the conditional use for property located at 4200 Industrial Park Drive, Altoona, and further authorizing the city manager, Omar Strom, to execute the decision and for the city clerk to attest to same. I'll take if everybody's okay with it, I can do the consent vote first, minus Resolution F.
Cool.
Okay? Councilman Butterbaugh?
Yes.
Councilman Kashadi?
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the consent vote passes 6-0. And now on item F, approving the conditional use for property located at 4200 Industrial Park Drive and further authorizing the city manager to execute the decision and the city clerk to attest to same. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Abstain.
abstained. Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the vote passes 4-0. We have an ordinance for adoption. It was introduced by Vice Mayor Butterbaugh. It's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 800-42 of the Altoona City Code as it pertains to small wireless facilities and creates new Chapter 595 of the Altoona City Code titled Small Wireless Facilities relating to permitting, placement, installation, and standards for small cell wireless communication facilities in the public rights of way. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
A second. This ordinance was moved for adoption by Vice Mayor Butterbaugh and seconded by Councilman Kashadi. And I'll call the roll for a vote. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh.
Yes.
Councilman Kashadi.
Yes.
Councilman Carper.
Yes.
Councilman Ickes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly.
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the vote passes 6-0.
Okay, moving on, city manager update. Omar, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple things I wanted to point out in relation to our upcoming work session 2 weeks from tonight. One is I'd like to have a brief discussion at the work session regarding potential refunding of eligible debt. I have some old numbers in front of me in relation to 2015, 2017, 2019 debt that we issued that is eligible for refunding and refinancing. Looks right now, at least the numbers I have, at about a 2.25% savings. So we'll be I'll have updated numbers and we'll be discussing that at the next work session. And if council's in agreement, we can move it on to the October regular council meeting for introduction of a related ordinance. And then also, probably the major, item on the next work session agenda, I envision as being a discussion of the ARPA monies and what to do with it. So I'll have some ideas about that. I'm going to throw them out to you, present them to you then. And obviously, we'll take your direction in terms of where you think we want to go with spending the monies and the projects that would be associated with those funds.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Council discussion items, Councilman Kelly.
Omar, I'd ask the question to you and/or our solicitor, and that is, what kind of an update do we have, if any, regarding the McCrory's building? Where are things right now?
Yeah, the Blair County Sheriff completed service of the condemnation proceeding on Mr. Helfrich on August 17th, 2021. The notice of condemnation had been filed July 18th, 2021. So by the end of this week, if they haven't filed preliminary objections, that 30-day period will have expired, and then the issue at this point is just compensation. It is my understanding, based upon Mr. I think it was back in earlier this summer, Mr. Helfrich and his attorney were here, and they had had someone do an appraisal of the property. It's my understanding, I believe that report has been completed. I have not received it. I've taken steps through the legal process to obtain a copy of same. So once I have that, I will certainly share that with so we can you know, if no preliminary objections are forthcoming, and my understanding, at least from based upon previous conversations with Attorney 4, I don't believe that's the route they were going to go. So the issue is just going to be what the just compensation is at that point, assuming there has not been a change in their plans.
Yeah, because they could have come back at any point here with their appraisal and say, this is what we think, you know, the building is worth and what we'd like to get from it, and we could agree or not agree, and if we agreed, then it would stop any of the other proceedings, and we could come to terms outside of the court system, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Mayor, I really had nothing else at this point, thank you.
Councilman Carper,
I have nothing else. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Butterball.
I would just like to commend the work that our public works folks did. I know when Ida was going to hit, we were wondering what was going to happen, and the last thing we wanted was another June 10th. And so Nate, your guys did a really good job there of cleaning out doing ditch work, pipe work, and everything they could do in preparation to make as much room for water as possible. And it really, they did a really good job there. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate that they had to get good at that, but they're good at that. So, good job.
Councilman Nickes.
Thank you, Mayor. Had a chance to attend a couple of different ceremonies over the weekend, with 9/11 being 20 years now, and just want to say thank you to our police and firefighters for all the work that they do on a daily basis, as well as attending some of these events. It was really good to see the city be represented in those capacities, so thank you. I know that I've had some discussion with the manager and the city solicitor regarding the business privilege tax in the city, and I think that might be an item, Mr. Manager, that maybe I would like to also perhaps try to discuss at the upcoming work session, just as a informational piece only. So, in a perfect world, if possible, I think in an attempt to try to spur incentive for business and commerce to come to Altoona, in a perfect world, I would like us to try to consider to do away with that tax, if possible. So we'll kind of see how things play out and what the numbers work out being on that. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Councilman Kashadi.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right, we'll take questions from the media now. Bill.
Thank you. Regarding the conditional use application, I guess this is for Tom. Why is there a special procedure for that? Like, why didn't that go to the zoning hearing board, for instance?
Actually, that's set forth within the code itself. That's the process by which you have to do it.
You mean
So-
in the city's code?
Correct. Yes.
Do you know why? Like, what's special about that?
I'll be honest, I think, Rebecca and I have been talking about this, and I think it was like one of the first time this had really come up. So it was, when it came up, looked at the code specifically addressed the situation, and so when the code specifically addresses how you handle a situation, that's what you do.
But you're not sure, like, why, what the rationale is? or
Now,
whatever.
that part of the code was here before I was, so I really couldn't explain that.
Okay.
And Bill, I wanted to correct the dates I gave you, Councilman Kelly. The condemnation proceeding for McCrory Building was filed July 19th. It was served August 18th on Mr. Helfrich. I was just double checking my calendar, so.
Served August 18th. Did you say?
I'm sorry?
Served on August 18th?
Correct. That's what Mr. Helfrich was personally served with it. The building had been posted prior to that, but he was personally served with it that day by the sheriff.
Okay. While we're on the McCrory's, could you clarify or re-explain what you understand is the intention of the owner? You said something about that, but I didn't really catch it.
Yeah, my understanding, and this is just based upon conversations with Attorney 4. Now, this is from a few weeks ago. I don't know if anything's changed in the interim, but I think at that juncture, their intent, at least as I understood it, was to really be looking more to the just compensation issue as opposed to filing preliminary objections challenging either the city's legal authority or the city's legal basis for filing the proceeding.
So does that mean it would be settled privately, or would that have to then go to court?
Well, the way it would work is this, assuming no preliminary objections are filed within that 30-day window, then the sole issue is just compensation. That can be handled a couple of different ways. The parties can arrive at an agreed upon amount as to what just compensation is, or it can go to a board of view. A board of view, the first step of that is the court will appoint 3 members of the board of view. They usually appoint an attorney, and they will then usually appoint 2 other people with real estate backgrounds. And the purpose of that board is to view the property, take testimony, listen to expert opinions, which normally come from certified appraisers, as to what is the fair market value of this building in its current condition. And then the board of view would issue a decision saying, we believe it is worth X amount. Once that decision is issued, if either party does not agree with it, they can file an appeal with the Court of Common Pleas. That is a de novo appeal, and what de novo means is just that. It is assigned to a judge. The judge, they are not bound by what the Board of View found. The judge gets to hold their own hearing, view the property, listen to the testimony, and make their own determination as to what the value is. So that would be, I guess, more of the litigated process on just compensation.
Okay. It seems to be that from what has been said before here, that it's just in the city's interest to get this done as quickly as possible. Is that correct?
I would agree with that, yes.
So does this look like good news or bad news, or a little in between as far as getting that done quickly?
Bill, until I see that, what that initial report was, because I think you were here at that meeting when Mr. Helfrich explained they had retained an appraiser and who was getting them a report. Like I said, I believe they got a report, and I'm taking steps through the legal process as outlined in the Rules of Civil Procedure to obtain a copy of that. Once I see that report, that'll give me a better idea if this is going to be a short or a longer process.
Meaning how far apart we would be.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, Bill, the sense of urgency is trying to resolve this before going through another winter and the potential additional damage that could be created to the structure.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
referring to, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah, ideally, it would be nice to see them put a roof on it and fix it up, and then not have to go through this process any longer.
Well, he was talking about having repairs done to the roof, and I don't know if a permit
don't
was
think
ever obtained for that or anything was ever, okay, so that hasn't been done. And we've had some significant rains, as testified by many of our residents who have had some issues, so I can't imagine that that's been good for that building. So,
How long ago was that they were here? Like July?
I believe that was the June.
June, it was
That-
June.
That was, I don't know if that was the regular voting session or the work session, but I know it was one of the June meetings they were here.
And correct me if I'm wrong, they had said that their appraisal would have been done by the end of that week is what they had expected at
No,
that point in
they-
time, or the following.
Yeah,
It was a couple of weeks out.
yeah, they were a few weeks out.
Certainly before
yeah.
September
Yes,
13th,
yes.
14th.
But where we are now is definitely not where they had indicated that, I mean, we have video evidence of where they had implied that we would be presumably at this point. We would have it, should have had at least the report by now.
I would have thought so, yes.
Do you know why they haven't shared the report?
I could only speculate as to why they haven't given us that report.
that's-
Perhaps
and
it's,
that wouldn't, I think speculation on that might be counterproductive.
Yes.
Okay. Tim, where is the current hazmat station? Is it next door here? Or?
We have equipment next door here, and we also have equipment in Juniata at Station 320.
Okay. And it'll be consolidated there at the... and also, Tim, the Juniata Gap area that you said is now not a place where you're sent by the 911 center.
It's 4th Avenue in Juniata. At Juniata Gap Road down through. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you said that there was an agreement for 4th Avenue, but not for Juniata Gap Road, or am I?
Yeah, we had an agreement. But since we've gone back and tried to verify whether or not we're on their box alarm or not,
Mhm.
and I'm having a little trouble getting that information. So we're going to continue to work to get that information. I mean, at this point, we had a verbal agreement that we would get dispatched, but it's on them then to make that memorialized with the county with a letter from their township supervisors.
Has there been any calls over there that in which you were dispatched or not?
Yes, there were. Actually, we were dispatched a few times, and then, again, as personnel change and things happen with the 911 center, because it's not memorialized in the system, we're not on a box alarm. So if somebody doesn't remember to call us, we're not going to get called.
Oh, so it's being informal. It's not
Right.
going to necessarily happen all the time.
Right.
Okay. And
I'm
that
not
would-
confident that will happen, I guess is the best way to put it.
And that the other Logan's company is United for that one, right?
Right.
Okay, thanks. Omar, the MMO, when is the deadline for submitting or for paying that?
Would be by the end of 2022. So legally, we're just required to pay it by the end of 2022. It's our practice to pay it quarterly, a quarter of it every quarter.
You mean during 2022?
Yes.
And
Because that'll end up being part of our budget.
Mhm. And could you say how much, what the percentage of funding is for each of the plans? 80% funded, 70%, whatever.
The non-uniform plan's the most funded. The fire department, or the fire pension plan, is the least funded. I don't have the most recent breakdown. Once the actuarial valuation reports are completed, we'll have a much better sense of that. It's probably in the upper 70s to about 80.
You mean for which one?
Aggregate,
Oh,
an
okay.
aggregate.
Meaning all three together.
Yes.
And the MMO, what percentage of that would be paid by city funds, and what percentage by the state aid that you get?
As you witnessed, Bill, it was about $5.4 million was the total. We receive about 1.7 million in state aid, approximately.
And does the city money come from that earned income surtax that's dedicated to pensions?
Until this point, it has, yes.
And is there an expectation that it's going to be higher than the income from that now or something?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you said to this point, you mean?
Yeah, so since we've established that fund, we've paid every penny above state aid out of that fund.
Oh, do you expect that to continue, I guess, then?
Well, there's a question about that in the next year, and we'll be talking about that at budget time, yes.
And can you remind me what that amount or what the percentage is for that EIT?
It's 0.4%.
And that applies both to city residents and non-residents who work in the city, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody care to comment on what Mr. Engel said about the employee of the codes department.
I would interject and recommend, that's a personnel matter. I've not reviewed
Personnel.
anything that was handed out by that gentleman, but clearly he was referencing him in his capacity as a code enforcement officer. That is a personnel matter, and I would think any discussion of that would happen in executive session.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's all I have. Thanks.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.